Hi, Andy Biggs here from Arizona's 5th Congressional District. I'm with Eli Crane from my good friend,
Arizona's 2nd Congressional District.
Arizona's 2nd Congressional District. We're here. We want to give an explainer video about the National Defense Authorization Act because I think people might say, hey, why didn't you vote for that? That's something we have to have. Normally, though, we would be voting for this in November, and there'd been a little bit more time to negotiate on some of these things. But regardless, Eli, tell us about at least one of the major components of this bill.
Yeah, so one of the things I've been most outspoken about is the continued funding for this proxy war that we're fighting in Ukraine. For a couple different reasons, I've been outspoken and have opposed it. One, because we can't afford it. We're $32 trillion in debt, and as you know, Andy, in less than 2 years, we're going to be probably closer to $36 trillion in debt, at least. Mm-hmm. That being said, we're also escalating a war by continuing to send funds and sending weaponry and equipment, and escalating a war with a nuclear power. And I think it's extremely dangerous. And you know, I've been sent here to represent my district and the people within it, and they have told me, and not everybody agrees, but the vast majority of them, they're not happy with us funding this Ukrainian war. They see that, you know, they know we have a financial problem in this country. They know that we have massive inflation. They know, and they know that that's a large part due to us continuing to print money that we don't have. They also know that we have no southern border, right? And yet we're sitting here fighting for the sovereignty and the border of another country. And they see, you know, they see the complete hypocrisy in that. And they're tired of these, you know, they're tired of us going from one endless war to the next endless war to the next endless war. And, you know, for that reason, I told leadership that I wouldn't be supporting this.
So I agree with that position on Ukraine. I've taken that position as well. I know that, again, in my district, there's some people who would disagree with that, but I think most people that I talk to agree with that position, as you've very well articulated it. So I wanted to relate something to you because it's so easy to just vote yes in this town. I mean, it just really is. That it's geared to vote yes and continue the status quo. Yeah. So, but oddly enough, a strange coincidence, we actually had in a hearing this week in one of my committees, we had the DoD finance guy, we had the Inspector General from the Department of Defense over the finances, and then we had the GAO, Government Accountability Office. They were there, and the Pentagon has been on the financial crisis list for 30 years, at least 30 years. And so I asked the DoD guy, I said, look, you guys haven't passed an audit ever in the history of the Pentagon, but you haven't passed one in 30 years.
Right.
And I said, what's the consequence to DoD when you guys fail an audit? And the guy says, well, we lose track of our assets. And I said, no, what's the consequence? He said, no, we lose track of our assets. I said, that's not a consequence. That's why you failed the audit.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, a study just came out and said that the Pentagon cannot find 61% of its assets. 61% of something that we've been sending. We've increased $300 billion over the last 5 years of funding to the Department of Defense, and they can't find 61% of their assets. So I said, the reality is there is no consequence. There is no consequence. We don't know where the money's going. We have warehouses of obsolete equipment. And they come to Congress, and what did we do? We didn't say, we got my audit amendment in. There's an audit amendment that I drafted and got into the bill. But the reality is we're giving them an additional $30 billion when we don't know where the last money went to. And some of that money is going, as you said, to Ukraine. And you want to know one other thing that's interesting about this. Outside of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, every dollar that we spend going forward for the next year, we have to borrow. We have no revenue
Right.
to pay for that. And so it seems to me that we need some transparency, we need some accountability, and we want, I'm going to kick it back to you because you got some amendments in there too. But I would just tell you, I want the best trained, best materialed, best best men and women in the military of anywhere in the world. I want to be so far out in front of everybody else.
100%, and I think that's often, when those of us who try and hold a hard line and say, hey, we're not okay with, paying for abortions in the military using taxpayer dollars. We're not okay with, this or that, or sending money to Ukraine. People will say, well, you don't care about the military. That's not true at all.
That's right.
I served in the military. I still have friends serving in the military. I want them to have the best gear possible. But I also, I do want to see some accountability. And I do want us to change our thinking within national security from, hey, we've got to subsidize global peace, to, hey, we need to take care of America first, okay? And we need to take care of Americans first, and we need to get our house in order. And that includes our Department of Defense. It includes every single institution under this government. And that's never gonna happen, Andy, if we continue to do the same thing over and over and over. You're just going to see more, bloated spending. You're going to see these continued forever wars, and you're going to see no accountability. You're going to see more failed audits unless somebody comes in, enough of us come in here and say, hey, we're not doing that anymore. And we're willing to vote no on some of these very tough votes.
Yeah, and like I say, it's in my opinion, it's always easier to vote yes because that's what the uniparty, that's what they want you to do.
Yep.
You and I both were able to get. I think I got 3 amendments in to the bill on my own. You got some amendments in. You want to tell people what amendments you got in?
Yeah. So one of the amendments that we wanted to make sure that none of the training or promotions in our military were based on race or ethnicity. We wanted it to be based on people's experience, their conduct, their character, their peer evals, the things that used to gain promotions.
You mean like merit?
Like merit, a meritocracy, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we also wanted to make sure that people's political affiliations or ideologies had nothing to do with whether they got promotion. Basically removing a lot of the wokeism from the military, because I think it's extremely dangerous, Andy. And as somebody that came from the military, still has friends in the military, I'm concerned about their safety. Once your focus goes off of being the most lethal, well-trained fighting force in the world, and it starts to, move towards being the most inclusive and the most diverse, that's your goal, you're in trouble. And a lot of people don't want to hear that in modern day America. But I'm telling you right now, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans, and the biggest global threats that we have, they don't do that stuff, and they don't do it for a reason, because they want to be as lethal as possible. And I think, the military shouldn't be a social experiment. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted that amendment in there.
Yeah, it's a great amendment, and the reality is, it gets back to where we started. Both Eli and I support the military. I mean, we really do.
Yeah.
We want it to be the best the military can be. I want every soldier to be the best trained. I want them to have the best equipment. I want them to know we have their back. But it's the military establishment is kind of been spiraling away from that ideal, and so with that, I mean that's really kind of summarizes why we voted no. We worked through it. No, I don't think anybody can say we walked away from them. We worked on getting amendments through. We wanted to make it better. There's too many war hawks here that want to keep funding Ukraine, and not enough people who want to say, let's really look at the budget. And so they were in a hurry to get through it. And last year we did it in November. So I just couldn't get there, and I think you probably couldn't get there either.
That's right.
So thanks for watching, and we'll keep you posted.